Hello, welcome. It's Jewel Fitzgerald, and it's another Monday's Admissions from the Heart. My hubby and I just came back from the best cruise ever. We have been cruising for over 30 years, and this sailing on the Radiance of the Seas was the best for us. We were actually celebrating our 50th wedding anniversary, and it was a bucket list cruise to sail from Los Angeles, California to Tampa, Florida through the Panama Canal. And our niece and nephew went with us for this 17-day cruise. And it was their first cruise. That in itself is amazing for the fact that they went on this cruise and they just, to me, just dumped in the deep end with 2 feet instead of doing like most people do when they go on their first cruise. They go on a 3, 4, maybe a 5 day cruise. They're usually something short, but it's usually 3 or 4 days just to get a taste of it to see if they want to do this. But they jumped right in at 2 feet only because they wanted to be with us to celebrate 50 years of marriage. And they're international travelers, so that was a good part. So they're already well familiar with what happens as an international traveler, which would happen with this cruise. So as it turns out, they loved it, and we were gone actually 22 days. So it was the best cruise ever, and we'll talk about why it was the best cruise ever. Something just got into my throat right there. So let's just go to the next slide. So this cruise, since it was the reason why we even did the cruise is because we wanted to do something a little different than any other cruises we have done, any other all-inclusives we have done, because it was a special occasion. 50 years, wanted to be a little bit bigger, a little bit better than what it was before. So for a cruise for an adventure like this, we had to plan this well over a year in advance. And we were trying to determine what we wanted to do. So our top two choices was a European cruise or a Panama Canal cruise. The Panama Canal cruise won out. Can't tell you what the reasons the Panama Canal won out because it was so long ago and I don't remember why we didn't do the river cruise, but I'm waiting to see what God has planned for us for a river cruise in the future when we will do that because He doesn't put stuff on my bucket list and it doesn't happen. River cruise is one of the things that's on that list. So with this cruise, our original plan, because what I'm going to be talking about is what the plan was for the trip and how it actually made some changes. The cruise was plan with God at the same time because we said, okay, which one should we do? And somehow the Panama Canal came to be. And we prayed about it, determined which one we was going to do, and Panama won out. Like I said, I just don't know what. So the plan originally was to drive from Cleveland down to Tampa, stay overnight in a hotel, fly to California the next day, stay in California a couple days, jump on the cruise, go through the Panama Canal, dock in Tampa, stay in Tampa a few days, and drive home in our car. And then the car would have drove around for those 3 days, so we didn't have to get a rental car. So the ideal to do this wasn't something I just came up with because it was a sister at our church who had done that with her family. They had went on the Panama Canal cruise, and I could have swore that she had told me, and actually I don't swear, but that she had told me that they drove down, flew out to California, and did exactly what I just told you, and said, "Oh, that's actually kind of a cool idea because then you'll have use of the car for rental in Tampa, and then you're driving back and forth, and it might have turned out cheaper for the air. I don't know at the time when we first looked at this over a year ago, right? So that is what the original plan was. However, that plan got changed because this is a trip that was occurring in October. October 3rd is when we sailed off. So a month before, we had to make a trip down, an unplanned for short-term trip, because most of our trips we plan for in advance, and every now and then a short-term trip will come up just out of the blue, but most of the time they're longer, and we plan for far in advance so we could pay down on them in cash. But we had to do this trip to Florida first part of September, and we were going to drive down, and we took another family member with us. So when that plan came into effect, we said, oh my goodness, there was just this huge heaviness about making this drive twice within a 30-day period. So it was really heavy, and the Holy Spirit said, you need to fly for your vac let me say Halloween, for your 50th anniversary cruise instead of drive down. And that was such a relief off our shoulders. We made the drive down in September for the family situation. And then we flew from Cleveland to Los Angeles, took the Panama Canal through, and then flew back from Tampa. So that was a whole lot better. And as it turned out, the cost to fly, even making the adjustments, because we had to make an adjustment with the flight that we had from Tampa to California to this open jaw flight action from Cleveland to Los Angeles and Tampa back to Cleveland, turned out less than it would have been for us to drive and have to stay in a hotel and the time involved. That just so happens. And then because it fell into a crazy period where the airlines, at least United is still doing it. They're not charging you change fees because of that whole situation back a few months ago with the outage that we had. So they're still not charging people to change flights. So I don't know how long that's going, but I'm glad we fell into the benefits of that still. Anyhow, so we flew. So we flew out to Los Angeles, and the plan was to stay. Anytime we do a cruise, we always, no matter where the cruise is going to be, we always fly in, and even if we're driving in, we fly in the day before the cruise so we could experience the area. Or the main purpose is really for flying is to make sure that we don't miss the ship. So if the plane was late or some delay because weather, all kind of things happen, outages, all that kind of stuff can happen, and we don't want to take a chance that we'll miss the plane, miss the ship, because we don't usually buy the airfare from the cruise line because it just works out better if we could do it separate, and then we just make sure we don't miss the ship. Because if you did get the benefit of getting the air with the ship is that the cruise line will make arrangements to get you where you need to be even if your flight is late. But we usually don't do that because I like to pick my own airline, and we usually come a day before. Even though the cruise lines can do that the day before and put you in a hotel, but a lot of times I can find a lot cheaper rate than the cruise lines does, and that's why that happens. So this time we said, well, we'll go and stay 2 days, not just one night, because I have tons and tons of family in Los Angeles, and that way it will give us time to hang out with family. I really wanted to stay longer, like 3 days, because our family is so far apart. And from Fresno, actually from Oakland all the way down to San Diego, we have family of all kind. Wasn't planning on seeing anybody, that many people this time, because didn't have the time. We would need to be there a week if it's going to go from see family from Oakland to San Diego. But we were only going to be there for 2 days. However, as it turned out, this is something that God didn't let us know until really close in, that as it turned out, we didn't see not one single family member, because all of the family members that we were trying to see were their schedules didn't fit with our schedule, especially since we flew in on a Thursday and we were going to get on the ship on Friday. So that means it's a weekday. So people got work schedules, they got schedules with the kids, they got sports, they got whatever's going on in their life. That in order to get with them, it would be super late at night, like after 9 o'clock, and that's just crazy to be up that late, especially if they have children. So we didn't see a single family member out there. It was the first time ever that I did not see a single family member while I was in California, and we were out there for 2 nights. But that was God ordained, and it was like, okay, so He wanted to make sure that we had a real vacation that was all by ourselves. It's just the two of us getting ready, getting prepared for this 17-day experience on a cruise, because this would be actually the longest cruise we've ever taken. The longest cruise previous to this probably was 8 to 9 days, but not 17. That's over 2 weeks still on a ship going from place to place just to go through the Panama Canal. So there we were. And then God also in this 2 nights hotel. Anytime I stay in a hotel, one or two things, I stay in a hotel that only has one or two benefits. Either one, they serve a breakfast. The breakfast is included in the cost, so we don't have to think about where we're going to eat. We just run downstairs, have our breakfast, and then we have dinner somewhere else. Because usually when we're out of town, we only usually eat 2 meals. You usually get up kind of late on a vacation, so you have a late big breakfast and then a late big dinner. 2 meals, no breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Lunch and dinner. May have a little snacks around that, but breakfast is covered, and then we go out and have dinner. Unless I'm staying in a timeshare or some kind of condo or some kind of Airbnb where we're cooking everything. So then I would cook breakfasts, I would bring dry goods for the breakfast, and then we would supplement that by the things we'd buy from a grocery store, like the meats, the bacon, the drinks, whatever else we need that's perishable, yogurt, that kind of thing, to go with our breakfast. And then sometimes we would cook some of the dinners. So I would have that pre-planned, but we'd have to shop and do that when we get there. So this time, before we even went, God said, the Holy Spirit said, nope, this time for this full 22 days, you're not going to do any kind of cooking at all. It's just going to be pure vacation, doing no cooking, and somebody else is doing the cooking and the serving. So it's rare that I have a trip where I'm not doing any cooking or anything. It just depends. So unless we're going into all inclusive, then yeah, definitely we're not doing any cooking because they're doing all the cooking. So, but this was not an all inclusive. This is a land at the beginning, cruise in the middle, and then a land at the other end. So I thought I had booked accommodations that had a breakfast. So this was one I picked, and I don't even know how I ended up with a Simply Sonesta's location. Because as a travel agent, I had never even heard of the product, but for some reason, I don't know how this got into my radar that I booked this over what I normally picked. So, and I booked it a whole year ago, so that's why I can't remember how did the Sonesta, Simply Sonesta, get on my radar and get into our booking for us to stay at this location. So I guess I must have, God helped me to forget that the nature of this kind of product because I'm thinking it's one of my usual ones that I usually go to that has a breakfast. So I was all planning for having this breakfast. When we got there, we realized, oh my goodness, this has a full kitchen in it. And they don't serve breakfast because you have a full kitchen, you do all your cooking, at pots and pans, all that kind of stuff. So we're there, no food to be cooked, to be had. So I said, okay, God help me to misremember the product that had a full kitchen because I would have remembered that and would have made a plan. Okay, we'll bring the dry goods for breakfast because on the front end I could have easily did that and then could cook breakfast. But like I said, the Holy Spirit said you're not going to do any cooking. So we ate out. We ate out for breakfast and we ate out for dinner. So the good part, at least I got to learn more about this Sonesta. And I said, oh, I'm going to have to use them again for some other location now that I know they have this full kitchen. Their accommodations are fabulous. At least the one in California is, if that's a good example. So I'm adding it to my list of potentials when I want to use a situation where we do the cooking instead of somebody else. So also during this thing, I think I told you my niece and nephew came and we were checking out the shore excursions and was hoping maybe we could be at most of them, but I already knew that potentially they were like something we don't like, and so we would go on some, but maybe hopefully most of them. And that's why we were actually planning that we'd be on most of them. Maybe one or two would be different. As it turned out, maybe half of them were different. They ended up on some, and we ended up on another. And then even when we were on a shore excursion together, it wasn't like we were hooked and tied at the hip either, because they could be on another street, we could be on another street, even though we came together in the same bus. We weren't following each other through all the stores, through all the things when we had free time. So that still worked out pretty cool. And then on the days that we had um, shore excursions together, or not together, when we got together for dinner, then we would talk about what just happened, what did you guys do during the day, blah blah blah. So that's always good. So the other thing that was different, and that is what's not on this list, I knew was something else I had meant to add on here, was that we always love to do the traditional style dining where we would stay for the late, we would eat at the late setting, and in this particular cruise line, just ship, it was 7:45-ish. So we were at late for 7:45, and we had booked this a whole year ago. And then when our nieces and nephew came in, they came in, I don't know, maybe 6 months to 4 or 5 months in, close to the time of departure. And for some reason, the cruise line couldn't get us on the same time. The early dining is always sold out, always, always sold out, no matter which cruise line you go on. So the evening dining usually is quite open, but so for some reason or another, they couldn't get them on that. So somehow I guess it got sold out too. So we never did figure out why. We just know that they couldn't do it. So we had to pull ourselves out of the traditional method and go to the my time dining. So the only disadvantage for me at the time, the my time dining means you schedule a date, a time, and we said 8 o'clock, we're gonna have dinner. And when you go, they place you at a different table every night. And it could be that means a different waiter, a different part of the room, that kind of stuff. And I like it better when we have the same waiters all the time because they get to know you personally, call you by name, they know what your particular needs are, they always have the stuff ready, laying down. They know if you like tea or coffee or whatever it is, they know what your needs are and they have it all ready to go. Where if you've got a different person every night, you've got a different experience every single night. They don't know you. They don't know your name or anything. So they just it's just a little less personal when you're with someone else. So the first night we were together, the four of us, and we fell in love with our two waiters, and we're like, oh my gosh, is there any way we could get you guys the full experience? So, and they say, I don't know, because this is the my time dining. You know how it works. Tomorrow you could be with Joe Smo over there, or over another table, or another part of the room, blah blah blah. And that's not normally how it works. Long story short, God worked it out, and we ended up having them all 16 nights, because the 17th day is the day we get off, and you just have breakfast, and they're not involved with that. So for dinner dining, he worked it out. God worked it out that we was able to have them all the nights that we were there. That was amazing because that's not normally how it's supposed to work, but it worked out. So then the end of the cruise, we had 3 days at Clearwater Beach. And the reason why we were going to stay even one night, because normally when we're done with a cruise, we just jump off, jump the plane, and go home, because we're at that point, we're ready to go, ready to be in our own bed, ready to be done, wishing we could be teleported home, no matter how long or short the experience is. Because there's never always no place like home, even though I'm always planning for the next trip. So we ended up staying 3 nights in Clearwater Beach because his sister's there, so we was going to visit her and see her while we were there, because there's no way we could fly through Tampa. Yeah, because the airport would have been the Tampa airport we would have flew out of. So we decided to stay in a resort that's in Clearwater Beach, which is only about half an hour, 20 minutes from where Tampa is, from where they live at. So we stayed 3 nights for that. We only saw her really one night because God had worked that out to where we only had one night. We had dinner for them with one night, and then the other 2 days we just had lots of free time, vacation time, transitioning back from being on a 17-day cruise back into being on the land before we get back home, to get back to the real world of living in the world without, where I'm actually cooking all the time and going to work and whatever else we do here instead of vacationing. So that was a wonderful 3 days there, and we got to see the aftermath of Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton, and see all the piles and piles and piles of sand that the storms have brought in. Because normally when the hurricanes come in, they strip down the beaches and they just take the sand away and end up somewhere out in the ocean somewhere. Now these storms brought back a ton of the sand from probably prior storms or wherever, brought them back, shoved them into buildings, shoved them into any open spaces. And so they had tons and tons and tons of sand that they had to clean out of buildings. And a lot of places got stripped out because of the water and the sand just ripping out stuff. So there were still hotels that were still closed. There were companies and businesses that were still closed. And the blessing part for us, the hotel we were staying in, since they had lower garages below, the garages got flooded, and then what do you call it, freight elevator got flooded, but the rest of the part where the lobby and then the rest of the living spaces was perfect, so they were still open because we were anticipating getting a notice while we were on the cruise that maybe we couldn't go because the place was flooded because we had heard it was a lot of flooding in Clearwater and anything that was close to the water, and even in places in Tampa. The blessing part for my sister-in-law, she didn't get flooded. They just lost electricity for a few days or so. So we visited her, and that turned out to be a wonderful time doing that. So the best part of the cruise, of course, was going through the Panama Canal itself. We went through 3 locks. I thought there was only going to be one, but there were 3 locks. And that was interesting. Sometimes we were going up, sometimes we were going down, and sometimes we went up and down. So that was like really cool just to see this man-made work of art that God taught somebody how to make these passageway so that we can go from the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean, and that was amazing. Almost like going from one side of the world to the other side of the world in this little 50-mile space. So that was really cool. And then my plan also was to finish my Stephen King book, Holly. I've been carrying that book around at other trips, several other trips, and it just was taking me forever because Stephen King writes his books so darn thick, and my schedule was just so busy, and sometimes I was carrying it on these vacations and only get a couple pages read because we were busy doing stuff, and that kind of happened with this in the 17-day experience. I was like, oh my goodness, I'm not getting into reading. I want to leave this book here. I wanted to actually donate the book to the cruise and include it in their library because all cruises have libraries, and this one does have a library. So it was like down to the last couple of days that finally I said, look, I got to sit down and treat this like it was a homework assignment. And that's what I did. I just sat down, finished reading that book, and I deposited that book into their library my last day. I'm like, oh my goodness, because I just did not want to carry this book back with me again from yet another trip. I mean, it's a thick book and it's heavy, and somebody else needs to read it. So now that book is out there, Holly, floating around on the Radisson Radiance of the Seas in their library. And I'm hoping somebody else is enjoying her because that was a really good book. All of Stephen King's books are good. And this particular one is the 5th of a series, but you don't have to necessarily read the first 4 to enjoy this 5th one. It's just that the characters from the first 4 are still in this book, went through all 5 books. So it just makes it better for background story, but it still could be read independently. And I was also thinking I was going to work on my 3rd edition of my book, The Lives of Jim, God's Treasured Possession, the 3rd edition. Not a drop. Holy Spirit said, nope, you're not doing that either. So that didn't happen at all. So it was just pure enjoyment, dancing every day, eating, having fun with the nieces and nephews, going on shore excursions, meeting new people, making new relationships. It was just pure fun, no work involved, other than the articles that God had me to write for the travel blog about what we did every day, and then doing some videos that are on the YouTube also. But as far as working on the 3rd edition of the book, not a drop, not a word. And then my other plan was that, and this wasn't even a plan, it was just a thought because I already knew this was just what I was thinking was going to happen, was when we get the Grand Cayman, my husband would drive the rental car because we've been in Grand Cayman 3 times before. Once was all 4 times now, because this is the 4th time we're on a cruise. First time we took a shore excursion. Second time we drove a rental car because we had been there before, and um, oh no, second time we went on what do you call it? We scuba dive. So we did an excursion, but it was a scuba diving experience. And then the 3rd time we did a rental car because we had been there twice before. Said we didn't need to do any excursion. We'll do a rental car and drive around. And we went snorkeling in Cemetery Beach. This time, the 4th time, we were going to rent a car also, and then just be with our niece and nephew. The niece and nephew had already been to Grand Cayman on an all-inclusive hotel. So only thing they hadn't seen was Hale. So that was the plan. We're going to go to Hale first and then go somewhere on one of the beaches and get in the water. And that's basically what we did. However, when we got there, my husband didn't want to drive, so I ended up driving. But I loved it because as a driver and instructor, it gave me an experience of driving on the other side of the road. For some reason or another, I could not remember this particular country drove on the left side of the road, even though he drove it last time. Somehow I just couldn't remember that I was on the other side of the car. I don't even know how that happened. So I don't know if that car, the steering wheel was on the other side. I don't know because I know I've seen that in other places like Bahamas or any other places. Like sometimes the wheel could be left or right. It doesn't matter. In this situation, the wheel was on the left side like it should be. And so that made the experience different anyway. So maybe that's what it was. Maybe our car wasn't, maybe the steering wheel, I don't know. My husband would have to tell you that because I can't remember why I don't remember that that country was on the left side of the road, especially since this is the first time we're coming. I don't even get that. So somehow it just got erased from my memory bank from all those times before. So I did the driving, and it was so much fun driving on the left side of the road because it was such an adventure for me to do that and remain focused because you definitely had to be focused because you're so automatic doing to what am I, 68 years old, and I've been used to for 46 years driving on this right side of the road. So this change to the left side is quite an experience. But it was a great experience, and now it gives me the experience to talk with my student drivers that I'm teaching while driving on the left side of the road. So that's why that was some of the things that turned out differently than we thought would be planned for our trip. Anyway, so let's just wrap this up where we talk about the difference between the plans we have and the plans that God plans. Now, when we planned this trip, we didn't do it haphazardly. We did talk about it, pray about it, and because we needed a plan ahead of time for financial reasons, so well in advance. So God was totally in the loop on whether we should do this Panama Canal as opposed to a river cruise or anything else for that matter. We could have did just a couple of days somewhere, who knows? But we just wanted to do something a little bigger. So anytime you have some kind of plan, you need to make sure you commit it to the Lord, whatever you do. So don't make a plan and say, okay, I'll make a plan and then ask God, what about that plan? So no, he should be totally involved with the plan. Like, first off, are you even going? Because you gotta make that decision that we're going to XYZ, and in this case, the Panama Canal, on a Panama Canal cruise. And then once you say, okay, that is the plan, then what's the details of that plan? But first commit it to the Lord, whatever you do, and then He will establish your plans. So that's that. From there, once the plan is say, okay, cool, yeah, that's a good thing. Let's do this. And then the thing is, He gives us the desires of our heart. The desires of our heart comes from Him to begin with. So once that ideal, that thought was in there, like I said, it gives me a whole bucket list of things of where I'm going, and without fail, everything that's been on my bucket list has come true, and that was definitely one of them. That's why I can't wait to see when the river cruise is going to come about. So that was on the list, and he established our plans. I wrote down what we wanted to do, these hotels, the rents, blah, blah, blah. And of course, you can see after I just told you, certain things got tweaked because he made it even better. And that's part of what made the trip our best trip besides the staff, because the staff was really made the trip even better because all of them met our personal needs and everything that we had, everything we needed. It was like we went back 30 years far as the quality of the quality of the service we got. It was like we went back 30 years to the day when the service was always top notch. And that was like amazing because they knew our needs, met our needs in every kind of way. God invaded that to happen. And that had to have happened because the from the leadership above was part of making that quality service happen because we saw the captain everywhere. We talked to him. We talked to all kind of other people. We talked to the mater. They used to call them mater d, but now they're waiter managers. We saw all these people all over the place, even though they were out of an area that they normally don't do. They're not normally in as they're serving us. Like so that was just cool that all of the staff was outstanding, amazing, met our needs. And then, so when you're making plans, like I always have pleasant plans. I'm a planner, I'm a planner, I'm a planner. But God has also taught me how to plan. Unless it's a long trip like this or a trip that we got to pay, it's going to take us a while to pay on. He says, I only want you to plan 3 months in advance. But for something long like this, okay, that one can be because you need to pay on it. But don't do the details of what you're going to do until later. Just plan, okay, we're going to the Panama Canal, but we're going to take over a year to pay on it. That's all that matters right at that point. Then later, 6 months out, okay, what do we want to do? We want to go to short skirts, as it gets closer. So I'm always have plenty plans. So many other plans in a person's heart. A lot of people have tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of plans, but is it the Lord's purpose that, but it is the Lord's purpose that will prevail. So we may have tons and tons of plans, are those plans that God wants you to do. So you always have to make sure that, okay, let's talk about it. Make sure you're having a relationship with God, talking about, I get these plans in my head. Are these plans that you want me to do? And making sure. And he will make it real clear whether it's something you need to do or is it something that, oh, no, it's not going to happen for another 5, 10 years, whatever. So don't haphazardly just plan to do something and then later on see if you can get a sanction or approval from God, or don't even get approval at all for that matter. Sometimes you can make plans and he's not even in the mix. That's even worse. So from whatever plans you have, always include the Lord in the plans, and those plans will become outstanding, more than you can imagine, if through your own planning. Because I know I love the plan, but when he takes the plans that he gives me, then all of a sudden it's like, wow, that turned out way better than I thought, because you decided to add this to this equation, or you took that out, or you moved this over here, blah 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 blah. So it's always so much better when God is always in the plan. So thank you for another Monday's Admissions from the Heart. And next week we will be in November. We are done with October into this week. It's just hard for me to believe that 10 months has already passed and now we have 2 months left of this year. So we'll see you next week for another Monday's Admissions from the Heart.